Well, less than a year from today, we will mark America's 250th birthday. And across the country, groups are commemorating this historic occasion in their own unique ways, honoring our founding fathers and extraordinary sacrifices they made to secure American freedom that we enjoy to this day. We at ALEC have launched the States 250 campaign, as you might have noticed this week, a national effort to highlight the role that states have played in securing our liberty, defending constitutional government, and making America the extraordinary nation it is today. We do this because we believe the best way to honor these 250 years of independence is by reminding people that the same spirit of freedom and governance is alive and well right here in your states every single year. And that is why ALEC is proud to partner with our friends at PragerU in their incredible exhibit, the Founders Museum, The Road to Liberty. This powerful project was officially unveiled at the White House earlier this year and delivers the story of America's founding life in schools, communities, and state houses across the country. And as you might have noticed, we have had the honor of hosting several of these exhibits right here this week at the ALEC annual meeting. If you maybe have paid more attention to the ALEC policy on this area, our Education and Workforce Development Task Force has just endorsed a resolution later today honoring America's 250th that you can take to your state to take this effort back home. Organizations like the Heritage Foundation, under the leadership of Dr. Kevin Roberts, have also stepped up to celebrate this historic milestone for our country, to remind Americans why our founding principles still matter. Through initiatives like America's 250th Innovation Prizes and a curated collection of historical materials, Heritage is helping to tell the story of our nation and why those founding principles continue to endure. More than a policy expert, Dr. Kevin Roberts is a historian, a strategist, and a tireless defender of American exceptionalism. He understands the best way to preserve freedom is to empower the institutions that made that possible in the first place: faith, family, community, and yes, federalism. Recently, as part of our ALEC States 250 effort, we've gone back and made an effort as an organization at our staff, and if you've heard us talk about this effort, a challenge to everyone to go back and reread the Declaration of Independence, to learn those first principles and lessons that Dr. Roberts is going to be talking about today. He's leading the Heritage Charge to make sure that this 250th celebration is not just about flags and fireworks, but about reaffirming the ideas that launched this great experiment in liberty. Please join me in welcoming the president of the Heritage Foundation, Dr. Kevin Roberts.
Way too kind. Thanks so much. How about a round of applause for Jonathan Williams, his great leadership. I've known Lisa Nelson for a while, ever since I moved from doing education full-time to doing policy full-time. Even though she's still young and dashing and beautiful, she's a great mentor. Round of applause for Lisa and her great leadership at ALEC. And West Virginia Senator Patricia Rucker, thanks for your own leadership at ALEC and what you do in your state. I start with an apology, and it's an apology to my really good friend, the governor of Indiana, Mike Braun, for wearing a tie, sir. The way I was raised on what we now call the Gulf of America. We're supposed to wear that in the presence of great men. You're a great man, but your wife, the First Lady of Indiana, is an even greater lady. So thank you all for being here and for your leadership. Really, all kidding aside, and to jump right in, the witness of Governor Braun and the First Lady is exactly what America needs. And that's what I'm going to home in on here. It is a combination of honoring our founding with common sense leadership in Indiana, along with, as I happen to know the governor well enough personally to say this, rooting that common sense not just in a love for America, a great patriotism, but in faith. And I'm here to tell you, for all of my legislator friends in the room, and thank you for your own service, that if, in fact, we miss this opportunity in front of us, not just over the next 11 and a half months to celebrate this wonderful anniversary, But over the next several years, over the next several decades, then we have no business doing what we're doing, either at the Heritage Foundation or, and I don't mean this to be sharp at all, I mean this as a friend, in your own elective service. And what gives us great encouragement, real excitement at Heritage and Heritage Action is to see the selfless service of all of you in elective office. And so the comments that I have today, yeah, I'll comment a little bit on America 250 to honor my friendship with Lisa and Jonathan. But as you might expect the president of the Heritage Foundation to do, I might have some thoughts about 10 policy things you can do, if you haven't already done them in your states, in order to secure America's future. The left does not like it when I say this, but that's because they've lost their sense of humor and they have no understanding of early American history. I can say that as an early American history professor. We are in the Second American Revolution. We are in the Second American Revolution. I don't mean that there needs to be bloodshed. Although the left, if you spend some time in Washington, D.C., around Capitol Hill and outside the Heritage Foundation every Monday, you know that these people are getting more and more violent. My point is, our point at Heritage, the way Governor Braun is leading Indiana with the great help of his legislator friends, is that we are renewing sovereignty and self-governance and faith in fellow man. And the way we're doing that, of course, starts with really good policy in our state capitals. But all of us know here, regardless of what our faith is or isn't, that if in fact upstream of politics and policy, our institutions aren't healthy, then our jobs in policy and politics will be that much harder. And so in this list of 10, there may be a quiz at some point down the road. You know how we operate at Heritage. The first thing that we have to focus on as policymakers, whether elected or informal advisors on the outside, is to remember the most important institution in society. And it's an institution that was so healthy, so vibrant at the time of our founding, in the 1760s and early 1770s leading up to signing the Declaration, that we would not have had a successful revolution without it. And that's the nuclear family. And so at Heritage, for the better part of 18 months, as then Senator Braun knew, we've been trying to figure out what's the appropriate role of public policy, whether at the federal level or state level or local level, to arrest declining birth rates, to arrest declining marriage rates. Because let me just tell you, and this won't surprise you because you know the Heritage Foundation's position on immigration. Immigration, legal or illegal, is not the solution to declining birth rates. It is very important we understand, as much as we honor immigrants, to some extent or another, we all are, right? Or at least ancestors of them, that we must understand the health of the family determines the health of the republic. And so I would encourage you, and obviously we're very happy to help you from the research side of this, to think about pilot programs that you would do at the state level or maybe at the local level. Maybe you pick one county or two, maybe with block-granted money from Washington, D.C., to figure out how we can address those problems. I'll be really honest with you and tell you we don't have all of the answers to this at Heritage. That's not something we always say. Because this is, while a long-running problem, something that we recognize is a civilizational crisis. And so keeping that framing in mind, whatever you decide to do, I think is helpful in moving on to point number 2. To make a prediction, which I probably shouldn't do as an early American historian. My colleagues, many of whom are here, say, Kevin, just stay focused on the past. Let us deal with the future. My prediction is in 2028, one of the top 3 deciding issues in that race will be the cost of housing in this country. Now, you can go down that path and sound like a particular mayoral candidate in New York City. That's not the path we at ALEC or Heritage are going to take, right? But you can also recognize, just being intellectually honest as a public policy person, that part of the diagnosis is something that we as conservatives and freedom lovers ought to pay attention to. And it is the case that it takes 3.5 times more income today than it did in 1985 to afford a starter house for a newly married couple. Regulation has a lot to do with that. The infiltration of 21 million illegal aliens in the last 4 years has something to do with that. Environmental guidelines, which have nothing to do with our love for the environment or the common sense, smart, conservationist attitude that Mike Braun has taken to that policy. It's about control. And so I would encourage you, especially at the state level, to be viewing those environmental guidelines not just as nonsense from the Green New scam, but as one of the sources of overpriced housing that is a barrier to Americans living the American dream. And ultimately, that's the connection between this policy agenda that Heritage has set out and America 250. And that is the greatest metric that we can guide our work by, yours and ours, is that at some point later in the 2020s or in the 2030s, a vast, vast majority of Americans are going to wake up and say, the American dream is alive for me. Because over the last 3 years, by Pew and by Gallup, a minority of Americans have said that. Point 3, the governor touched on this well, so it's important, but I'll be brief about it. As conservatives, being part of the conversation about being conservationists, that is our policy inheritance. That's not something the left has come up with. But understanding that without subsidies, without artificial interventions into the market, that if we take this all of the above approach, we also have to be honest with ourselves, especially in our legislative sessions, that for the last decade, even in red states, we have given preferential treatment to fickle energy sources, as wonderful as they may seem. And that harms humans. Just ask the Spanish people right now, who literally are on the brink of a civil rebellion because of the nonsense of their prime minister with net zero. Ask the Europeans every winter who are running out of energy, unless they happen to be in a place like France, which has a lot of nuclear reactors. The answer here is really clear, but we would encourage you from Heritage to follow the lead of Secretary Burgum yesterday, who said, while we love this all-of-the-above approach, this is America after all, the time has come to end the preferential treatment through subsidies and permitting and regulations for these artificial industries. You probably didn't expect me, as an early American historian, talking about America 250 to talk about green energy subsidies. But it is, all kidding aside, it's directly related to the inability of Americans to afford the American dream. So I encourage you to be bolder than you've ever been in fixing that problem. Fourth, and here I will be blunt, perhaps even bellicose. China, the Chinese Communist Party, is the greatest adversary in the history of this country, including Great Britain during the American Revolution. You must do everything in your power. You must do everything in your power, yes, at the state level, to participate in weakening the Chinese Communist Party. Lobbyists should not be allowed to work for the CCP in your state capitals. The CCP should not infiltrate our institutions of higher education. And pardon me, but they damn well shouldn't be able to own land in this country. Fifth, we love immigrants and immigration at Heritage, but we are in a crisis. Thank God for Donald Trump and his administration for beginning to fix it. But if you ask yourself the question, what can we do at the state level to accelerate this first chapter in reforming a long, terrible story about our immigration system? We might suggest at Heritage that you run your own censuses and count only citizens. Hans von Spakovsky is here. He's very happy to help you with that. We would also encourage you today, if you're not already doing it, understanding that sanctuary cities and runaway municipalities really are standing in the way of our former Heritage colleague Tom Homan doing his job, that you require at the state level that local law enforcement agencies sign a letter with the Department of Homeland Security to participate in the 287G program. This is the only way that the federal government is going to be able to remove, as President Trump has said is our goal, all 200,000 of the felons we know among that group. This is something that you can do, and obviously we stand ready to help. Sixth, something that's close to my heart because my adopted hometown is Austin, Texas, a once great place that's been taken over by Marxists. When we have cities like Austin or Nashville or other capital cities whose local government is not representative of the will of the people, de-charter them and establish them as state municipal districts in the name of common sense. If you ask me, yeah, that'll make the news. We can provide air cover too. That's a promise if you do that. If you ask me, Kevin, what's the biggest threat to this common sense agenda that Trump and Vance have laid out and that we all agree with mostly? It's that. It's that there are government entities that illegitimately are imposing something other than the American dream on their people. Seventh, eighth, and ninth all have to do with education. My Texas legislator friends know that I think education is the end-all, be-all. I'm a fifth-generation teacher. But number 7 is, it's great that we passed school choice. God bless you for doing it, don't get me wrong. But now it's time to focus on the content, because the content is still questionable. And I would encourage you to do something really revolutionary. Eliminate the SAT and ACT in your states and add in their place the classic learning test as the achievement test of record. Eighth, if you haven't done it already, make teacher licensure one of the easiest things to get for people who are qualified with a college degree and business experience. And yes, Randy Weingarten will hate it, which means that it's a great idea. And ninth, having been a president of a college, albeit a small one, while I'm tempted to tell you that the best reform to higher ed would be ending faculty tenure, I want you all to be reelected, and so I won't say that. Although I will tell you from the inside, tenure reform should happen. I will instead say something that maybe you've thought about, maybe you haven't. It's underappreciated as the source of power. End the accreditation cartel of the regional accreditors. They're both rackets. They are both rackets, tenure and the accreditation cartel, that protect vile, vulgar things that shouldn't be around, like anti-Semitism. Finally, number 10 is a question, and it's my concluding question. You've done great work in policy. You want to do more great work in policy, and the most important thing I have to say to all of you today, starting with the governor, is our sincere gratitude from the Heritage Enterprise for what you do, truly. We love what you do, and when you need anything, we're there for you. But next year, Heritage will again be publishing, for the first time in over a decade, the Index of Cultural Flourishing. We have the Index of Economic Freedom, which is an international publication of economic freedom of different countries. Not surprisingly, the United States has been slipping. We have the Index of Military Strength, very important, especially right now, as Secretary Hegseth leads a great reform of the Pentagon. We have, as many of you know, indices on election integrity, on education freedom. In a lot of ways, as Jonathan and Lisa would say about their own similar products, those are the most helpful things to you. But the reason we're reprising the Index of Cultural Flourishing is to provide data for this question. Is everything we're doing in public policy at the state level, at the federal level, at the local level, in the spirit of the 250th birthday of the greatest civil society ever known to man, focused on allowing families and individuals to flourish, not just economically, but also, very importantly, socially and culturally, and if they so choose, religiously? If we start thinking about all of our policy decisions through that lens, then I can tell you that America's 250th birthday next year will actually be the beginning of a second 250th period in which we continue to be the last best hope in the world. God bless you. Thank you for your work.